So this, ladies and gentlemen, is Mr. Peter Friedman. And he is an expert on Sharia law. And he's a tremendous speaker. And people come from all kinds of distances away to hear him speak. This is going to be his speech tonight on Sharia law. I want him to come back as soon as possible with his second session that he does.
How to win elections.
Yes, on how to win elections. And we're going to do that before the election. So I'm going to turn it over to Peter now so that he can
do my thing.
Enlighten us all to Islam and the threat. Two more reps.
Okay, I've been doing this now for about 40 years, and all of a sudden, since 9/11, people are starting to pay attention, or they were. A lot of people went back to sleep, so I'm out here and pounding the pavement again. In the last year, I've spoken to 60 groups. Half of them were Tea Party groups, and the other half were Republican women's groups. So I think that you guys are hopefully going to save us, because we have a really big problem. Islam today is involved in our financial system. There's the Dow Jones Islamic Index, which most people don't even know. I've had stockbrokers in these groups, and I've said, hey, why don't you stand up and tell everybody about the Dow Jones Islamic Index? And they're going, what? There's over 1,000 funds in it. You want to know why Glenn Beck was no longer on Fox News? Because Rupert Murdoch sold an interest to Prince Al-Walid bin Talal, who is the nephew of the King of Saudi Arabia. And so he got kind of offended because of what Beck was saying on the air, and they decided they were not going to renew Beck's contract. So we've got them in our entertainment system. They're in our court system. Governor Brown just named a devout Muslim who was on the executive board in California of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, to the Superior Court. So we've got them in the legal system, the financial system. There's over 15,000 Muslims in our military now. Okay, this is kind of like Major Hassan at Fort Hood. We have a problem, okay? And everybody keeps saying, well, but those are the moderate ones. There is no such thing as a moderate Muslim. Islam isn't moderate. So you have those who take the religious obligations in Islam seriously and act on them, and then you have those who don't or haven't yet. And every time somebody argues this point with me, and I go, well, let me ask you a question. You know, the suicide bombers over there in the Middle East, are they reading the Quran in Arabic or in English? And that pretty much stops any of this conversation, because they're reading it in Arabic. So when they tell you that, well, you can't really translate the Arabic into English, that's very interesting, and it's also wholly untrue. So what is going on now? I am a great fan of Ronald Reagan. This is a quote from Ronald Reagan. Summer of 1979, I was one of 2 pilots flying Ronald Reagan up and down California while he was stumping for president, and got to know him and Nancy very, very well. And Reagan was a terrific cowboy. He'd never get off the airplane wherever we stopped until the catering truck came out and fed the 2 of us. I'd like to think that that was because he was a terrific cowboy and not because he didn't want to fly with 2 hungry pilots. But anyway, got to know him very well. This is my website. It's been up for a year. It's #1 on Google. Has been that way for about 6 months. If you want to learn about the threat of Islam, all you got to do is just write "threat of Islam," and our website comes up. I've got business cards here with my name and the website, my phone number, and everything on there. I would encourage you to take them. I also have some handouts here of the main 10 questions to ask any Muslim who tells you that Islam is peaceful and compassionate. I also have on here the correct answers to those questions and all of the references to all of the various things like the Quran, Bukhari's Hadith, the sayings of Muhammad, the reliance of the traveler, which is the sacred Sharia law going back to 800. It's all here. It's all you really need to know. It's also on my website. First thing you need to know is that our government has been lying to us. They have lied to us for at least 10 years, maybe 12 years now. I also fault George Bush for this, because right after 9/11, Bush came out, if you recall, and he said, not to worry, it's only a religion that has been hijacked by radicals. Now, I know why he said it, but he never corrected it when everything kind of died down. Now, I don't know whether he still believes it or not. If he does believe it, he's a moron, and if he didn't believe it, then he shouldn't have set us up to be vulnerable. This is what the showers looked like at Auschwitz in Poland, the extermination camp. And if you remember your World War II history, what occurred... Okay, just pull it down. It's all right. Just yank it down. Just yank it down. Okay. What occurred, it'll get better. What occurred was the Nazis rounded up all the Jews in Western Europe. They put them on trains. The trains had no showers, no sanitation, no food, very little air, especially during the summer. And they sent them on a 3-day train ride to Auschwitz in Poland. And then when they opened the doors, they said, hey, wouldn't you guys, after that long train ride, like to have a nice hot shower? And that's how they got them all into the gas chamber. Sure, we'd love a hot shower after that ride. This is what's going on here in the United States of America today. It's all a bunch of crap that you hear on the news. Okay? I'm here to tell you the truth. I'm not going to pull any punches with you. We need to have truth now. We've had enough of this garbage over the years, and now we have a problem that we are going to have a real big issue with trying to resolve. So, what goes on in the news are sound bites. And the people in the press who are all in on it, they don't connect the dots between the sound bites. They don't tell you that something that happened today actually connects with something that happened a week ago. They don't connect the dots. It's like the Wizard of Oz. Okay, never mind the man behind the curtain. All of this stuff is diversion. It's all diversion to keep you anesthetized. Okay? You have to understand that. Things will then become obvious to you when you do. You can start putting the dots together. 2 months ago, I was invited to do this at 2 Rotary clubs. The Friday, these were Friday lunches. Thursday night, before the lunch, in both cases several weeks apart, I get a call from the president of the Rotary Club saying, you know, we're going to have to cancel your lecture tomorrow because we have some Muslims who are members of the Rotary Club and they think they're going to be offended. And I said, are you aware of the Hamas Charter? The what? The Hamas Charter. All of this is on my website. You can go look it up for yourself. Don't take my word for it. No concept of the Hamas Charter. I said, do you know who Hamas is? Well, they had kind of a fairly good idea. How about a terrorist organization? So I said, go to the Hamas Charter. It's on my website. Go to Article 22 and read it. The Hamas Charter specifically accuses Rotary clubs and Alliance clubs of subverting Islam. So while we're on the phone, I can hear one of them, they're typing on the computer. She pulls this thing up there and she goes, well, I didn't know that. I said, well, who do you want to offend? Do you want to offend a couple of people who shouldn't be a member of the Rotary Club in the first place? Or do you want to get the information to the other 95 members of your Rotary Club and tell them the truth? Well, we'll get back to you. Never heard from either one. Last month, I got a call from one of the presidents of the Rotary Club in Concord, and he wanted to know, in spite of what had occurred, would I like to join the Rotary? And I said, sir, do you remember Groucho Marx? I said, do you remember what Groucho Marx used to say? Why would I want to be a member of a club that would have me as a member? He didn't understand that. So I hung up. Barack Obama. You hear this? That's the Islamic call to prayer. You hear that 5 times a day. At sunrise, 3 more times during the day, and then at sunset. This is what Obama said. February 27, 2007. Now people ask me, do I think Obama's a Muslim? I don't care if he's a Muslim, but I care what Muslims think. The problem with Obama is that he is the highest form of Muslim seen through Muslim eyes. He's third generation. His father was a Muslim, his grandfather was a Muslim. That makes him, in Muslim eyes, as the highest form of Muslim. The lowest form on that three hierarchy tier is a convert, okay? Because they don't really trust converts that much. So, is he a Muslim? I don't know. But what would he be doing differently in the last 3.5 years if he were? Think about that. So there's 4 stages of Islamic conquest. The first is infiltration. Okay? We have been infiltrated because they're in our financial system, our judicial system, our school system. They're everywhere. Gentleman was talking to me earlier about how in the 7th grade his grandchild actually was exposed to Islam, not Christianity or Judaism or Hinduism or any Buddhism, but Islam, where the Saudis actually funded getting the kids Galabia robes, the hijabs for the girls, prayer rugs. That's insane. That's suicidal. Cultures are not equal. The next is consolidation of power. This is what's going on in the Middle East right now. Do not buy into this crap that there's an Arab Spring going on. It's an Arab nightmare. Barack Obama gave a speech at Al-Azhar University in Egypt, in Cairo, on June 4, 2009. He opened the cage door and he let the animals out. For the last 40 years, the Muslim Brotherhood has been an outlawed group. They assassinated King Farouk in 1952 that put Nasser on the throne, as it were. They tried to assassinate Nasser in 1954 when Nasser refused to Islamicize Egypt. They killed Anwar Sadat, if you recall that. That's the Muslim Brotherhood. It was started in 1928 by a guy named Hassan al-Banna. And it was started in 1928, which was 10 years after the Ottoman Empire fell in World War I, to recreate the Middle East Caliphate. That's what's going on right now. And our government is helping them do it. Obama just sold 130 M1 Abrams tanks to Egypt and wrote a check to the Muslim Brotherhood for $2.5 billion to pay for them. Where do you think the tanks are positioned now? They're back in the Sinai, pointed at Israel. Stop watching sound bites. Connect the dots. Number 3, open war. That's what took place in 1979 under the Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran. Jimmy Carter financed getting rid of the Shah and financed bringing Ayatollah Khomeini from Paris out of exile to Iran. Carter should be dead already. My hope in life is to outlive the bastard. That's all I want to do. I want to make sure they're gone, Pelosi, Harry Reid, the whole bunch of them, and I'm still standing. Iran, open war. That's what occurred. That's what is occurring now in Syria. That's what happened in Lebanon with the civil war. The Muslim Brotherhood and Hezbollah took over Lebanon. Lebanon used to be Christian. Let's face it, Muhammad was born in 570. Muhammad was born in Arabia and Mecca 570 years after Jesus. The Middle East was called the Holy Land because it was Christian. Where was Jesus born? He was born in Bethlehem. It was all Christian at that time. The Muslims have now thrown all the Christians except 10% out of the Middle East, and they're burning churches down as we speak right now in Egypt. That's what's going on. Don't be sidetracked by the crap you hear on TV between Obama and Romney and contraceptives and Obamacare. Those are all red herrings so that you will not step up and see what's really going on. Then ultimately you wind up with a totalitarian Islamic theocracy, just like Iran. Iran will get the bomb. Get over it. Iran will get the bomb. They will give it to Hezbollah. Hezbollah will use it against Israel. And believe it or not, I will predict, take this to the bank, that if Obama gets reelected, American military will be bombing Israel. It's called the responsibility to protect doctrine. It is happening now. That rat Elizabeth Warren in Massachusetts, who's running against Scott Brown, is the one who put it together. She was in cahoots with Elena Kagan, who sits on the Supreme Court. All of this is on my website. Read it for yourself. Don't take my word for it. This is what is going on behind the curtain. And all we hear about always the economy and the stock market and the rest of this stuff, because we want you to make sure that you're interested in getting a shower after that horrible train ride. Here are the Muslim centers in America just in 2004. On 9/11, there were 900 mosques in the United States. There are over 2,500 today. What happened after 9/11 was we bent over so far to show how tolerant we are that it created this ethical vacuum in this country, and the Muslims said, let's get in there. Let's get in there. Okay? We can do this without firing a shot. And that is what has occurred. That's why you see people now walking around Safeway Market in hijabs. They're everywhere. They're absolutely everywhere. We played a game with the TSA last month. I took my fiancée, I put her in a hijab after we had gone through TSA security checkpoints 3 times and they were attempting to force us to go into the back scatter machine. Now, what's really interesting is I carry a law enforcement badge, and it didn't mean a thing. Didn't mean a thing. So we had to submit to pat-downs. The 4th time we did that, we went through the TSA security screening, and I put a hijab on her, and they waved her right on through. TSA stands for Thousands Standing Around. It's a worthless group. Absolutely worthless. I've been an FAA power plant and airframe mechanic now and an aircraft inspector since 1977. I can guarantee you I can disable an airliner in 5 minutes if you put me in the galley. I'll bring it down. We are not checking ground personnel. We're not putting security in place for mechanics, for ground handlers, for baggage handlers, for cabin cleaners. How hard is it? And I have told the FAA and Homeland Security this a million times since 9/11. How hard would it be to get on an airplane with a reserved seat? And if you notice, next time you're on the plane, reach underneath that seat cushion. There's a little pocket there with a life vest in it. So you go and you reserve that particular seat. You're in 23A. You're a suicide bomber, and you have a friend who works on the ground as a baggage handler, a cabin cleaner, and he goes and he puts a weapon in the life vest pocket in 23A. They'll never find it until it's too late. That's why I always fly Southwest. Seriously, because you can pick your own ticket. Or your own seat. I always sit in the back over the black box. I figure if they find the box, they'll find me. California has got the largest number of mosques of any state in the United States. There's over 300 of them. These are the current. Well, this is about a year old now. Go to IslamicBulletin.org and you can find all the mosques. Opening times, addresses, everything. There's over 300 of them in the state of California. Now, what's really cool is this. This is the smoking gun. This is on my website. You can download it. You can print it. You can do whatever you want with it. 2008, the FBI conducted what was called the Holy Land investigation. It was the Holy Land Foundation, located in Virginia, where all the rest of these bogus Islamic charities are located. And they nailed these guys for money laundering and sending money to Hamas, Hezbollah, and Al-Qaeda. Now, there were 19 guys that went to prison over this for terrorism and aiding and abetting terrorists. They found this document in the homes of half of them. This is a very interesting document. This document is an explanatory memorandum on the general strategic goal for the group in North America. But look at the date. May 22nd, 1991. These bedbugs have had a jump on us over 20 years. What does the document say? The first 18 pages are in Arabic. If you take a look right here, you'll see the Department of Justice evidence stamp on these documents. It's also up here. This is right on the FBI's website. The second 18 pages, it's 36 pages. First 18 are in Arabic. Second 18 pages are the English translation. Page 18 lists 29 groups in 1991 that were already in the United States of America subverting us. Already in 1991. So you have groups like ISNA, number 1, the Islamic Society of North America. When Obama took office, the first thing he did when he went to the West Wing of the White House, back there in January of 2009, he brought a woman into the West Wing as his Islamic liaison, and her name is Dalia Moged. Okay? She was the president of ISNA, directly tied into these 29 unindicted co-conspirators back in the Holy Land Foundation prosecution for laundering money going to Islamic charities, okay, that funded Hamas, Hezbollah, and Al-Qaeda. Number 2, the Muslim Students Association. They came here in 1966. Our esteemed Republican, and I say that facetiously, last governor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, granted San Francisco State University's student activities to the Muslim Students Association. So the MSA at San Fran State controls every student operation going on the campus, and they're the only group on San Francisco State's campus that pays no rent on the facilities. Figure that out. You could go down here, you'll go down to NAIT. Where's NAIT? The North American Islamic Trust. Right there, number 8. The North American Islamic Trust. They are funded by Saudi Arabia. They own outright 75% of every mosque built in the United States. By the way, did you know that every mosque in the United States is tax exempt under 501c3? Just little things like that. Anyway, you have all of these different groups here. All of these things are unindicted co-conspirators in the money laundering case for the Holy Land Foundation. This is a nice little chart that was put out by the FBI. You can see that Muslim Brotherhood finances the Mountain View Los Altos Union High School District. That's where you're from, in Belmont. You've got the Muslim Students Association. You've got the Islamic Society of North America, ISNA. So Obama's had this going on now ever since he got into office. Should we mention Wienergate? Huma Abedin? Okay, who is Hillary's right-hand
Girlfriend?
Executive assistant. Pardon me, executive assistant. I'll bet you didn't know that Bill and Hillary visited Saudi Arabia in 1996 and then brought her over as an intern. I use that term loosely. Brought her over as an intern, and she has had a top secret clearance in the White House and as the top liaison assistant to our Secretary of State since 1996. Her mother runs the Muslim Sisterhood in Saudi Arabia. Her brother runs the Muslim Brotherhood at Oxford University in England. Gosh, you suppose there's a connection? She's the one, by the way, who arranged for Obama to make his speech in Cairo on June 4th, 2009. Speaking of dates, Does anybody know, except for Robin, where 9/11 came from? Does anybody know why we were attacked on 9/11, September 11th? These guys hold a grudge. 400 years. They attacked us on 9/11 because that is the anniversary of the worst Muslim defeat, outside, of course, 1967, with the Six-Day War, of the Muslim army at the gates of Vienna on September 11, 1683. These guys hold a grudge. Now, can you figure out, except for Robin, can you figure out what was significant about being in Egypt on June 4th? I just gave you a hint. The 1967 war. On June 4th, 1967, the Israeli Air Force wiped out all of the Egyptians in the Sinai Desert. Wiped out their Air Force, wiped out 800 Russian tanks sitting in the Sinai. So isn't it interesting that Obama picks June 4th to go to Egypt to give a speech where he has invited the outlawed Muslim Brotherhood to attend on June 4th, which is the anniversary of the worst defeat in Egyptian history outside of the Exodus. Connect the dots. Infiltration. This is the terrorist network in America right now. Did you know that in Santa Clara there are storefront offices for Hamas and Al-Qaeda? There's storefront offices in Santa Clara. You can walk into the office and they'll give you all kinds of materials and literature. Tell you all about Al-Qaeda and Hamas. And we tolerate this. We should have the German-American Bund there too. Here's offices of terrorist groups in America. Santa Clara, Al-Qaeda, Hamas. Los Angeles, you've got Al-Islamiyah, you've got the Algerian Islamic group, Tucson, Al-Qaeda, Hamas. They're everywhere. You need to open your eyes and look. The FBI at least admits to these 35 terrorist training camps in the United States. They at least admit to these. There's a lot more. There's 2 of them up in Humboldt County. There's one in Del Norte. I was just up there. We have pictures of it. All you got to do is fly over it. You can see it right there. They train. You'll see some of these things. You'll see the one that's in upstate New York. Notice that there are 2 that the FBI admits to in California. They're up here where we are, in Northern California. One of them's down there in the mountains by Santa Cruz. So where does all this stuff come from? All of this stuff comes out of this book, the Quran. What is the Quran? The Quran is 114 chapters, 6,247 verses, and it is a roadmap for world domination. This is not a religion. Not as we know it. Okay? Religion is supposed to teach people how to live peacefully with their neighbors. Thomas Jefferson once said, you want to live peacefully with me? It's very simple. Don't break my arm or pick my pocket. It's that simple. You go into the Old Testament. Let's say you take everything out of the Old Testament, except you are allowed to keep one thing for people to live peacefully with each other. What would we keep? 10 Commandments. That's pretty good. Okay? In fact, there's 613, and you can read them all in Deuteronomy. And imagine Moses coming off Mount Sinai going, okay, everybody, I got these 613 commandments, and they would have said, okay, Mo, we're going back to Egypt. 10. It's all anybody can handle. 10 of anything. Okay? So let's take the New Testament. If you could take all the miracles and everything out of the New Testament, you were allowed to keep one thing that would teach people how to live peacefully with their neighbors. Sermon on the Mount. Okay? Go to Matthew 5. Pretty good for a nice Jewish kid, huh? I've read it. Trust me. Okay? I'm not one of those liberal ones either. I'm a Warsaw Ghetto Jew. You want a piece of me? You better bring a lunch because you're going to be here for a while and I'm going to take 100 of you with me. The Quran. So what does the Quran say? Now, in 1930, it was 3 years since Mein Kampf came out, Hitler's manifesto, right, for domination. And people read that and they went, nah, That's politics. That won't happen. I think we were wrong. Read the book. Do you know what the best-selling book besides the Quran is in the Middle East? Just give you a hint. Mein Kampf. They idolize Hitler. Why? Because Hitler tried to exterminate the Jews. So that makes them blood brothers. Okay? The enemy of my enemy becomes my friend. So what does it say in the Quran? You go to book 9, you go to verse 29. Fight those who do not believe in Allah until they pay the tax in acknowledgement of Muslim superiority and they are in a state of subjection. Well, that's pretty straightforward. That's pretty clear. You'd think that the mafia reprinted that right from the Quran, right? It's protection money. So instead of Guido showing up on Friday afternoon picking the envelope up, you got Ahmed picking the envelope up. There's no difference. There's absolutely no difference. You'll see for yourself. Then I get people, well, I haven't had a Muslim sit there and debate me in 2 years now because they know that I know the Quran better than they do. So I used to have people who said, well, you really can't translate the Arabic into English. Guy on Brian Sussman's show told me that just a week ago. And I said, really? I said, once again, are the suicide bombers around the world reading the Quran in Arabic? Or are they reading it in English? Seems like it says the same thing. So on my website, you will find this publication where some really bright person, I wish it had been me, decided to take the Arabic, which has not changed in 1400 years, and put the main 3 English translations right next to it so that you could read those translations for yourself. See the difference? So in Yusuf Ali's translation, that's on my website under Qurans, the entire Quran translated by Yusuf Ali. He says, fight those who believe not in Allah nor the last day until they pay the jizya. Jizya is the Arab word for extortion money. With willing submission and feel themselves subdued. That's all us, by the way. Shakir says, fight those who do not believe in Allah, nor in the latter day, etc., until they pay the tax and acknowledgement of superiority, Muslim superiority, and they are in a state of subjection. That's us. If we pay the money, then we get to live in a state of inferiority. Okay? If you don't have any money, Pickthall. Pickthall is acknowledged by 75% of all English-speaking Muslim schools as the main authority. Pickthall is on my website. Fight against such of those who have been given the Scripture, that's Jews and Christians only, given the Scriptures, believe not in Allah nor the last day, until they pay the tribute, readily being brought low. I'm sorry, I don't see a difference in the translation. If you're dead, you're dead. Now what's interesting is Pickthall talks about people of the book. The Quran talks about people of the book, people with Scripture. That's Jews and Christians. So everybody probably remembers the Ground Zero Mosque last year, and you got Imam Rauf, who was always being interviewed, and his wife Daisy. Go figure. Okay, so here's Imam Rauf. He's on TV and he's saying, oh no, he says the Ground Zero facility is going to be an interfaith facility and we welcome Jews, Christians, Muslims, of course, Hindus. And I'm going, Hindus? I was going to take my shoe off and throw it at the TV. What do you mean, Hindus? They don't have a scripture. So when you read the Quran, what does it say about what a Muslim is supposed to do as a religious obligation when he goes from the land where Islam controls it, which is called Dar al-Islam, Dar meaning land, al meaning of, Islam of course is Islam, Dar al-Islam, and he goes into what is now referred to as Dar al-Harb, or the land of conflict where Muslims are not in control. Okay? We are Harbis. In Arabic, literally, we are Harbis. Sounds like we're back in the Wizard of Oz again. Okay? So what is a Muslim supposed to do? He comes from Dar al-Islam, he goes to Dar al-Harb, he moves into our neighborhood, he knocks on your door and he goes, this is now Muslim ground because you were dumb enough to sell me a house in your neighborhood. This now belongs to Islam. This is now Dar al-Islam. So, I need, as a religious obligation from the Quran, to give you 3 doors. It's kind of like Monty Hall. Okay? Door number 1. You convert. And you go, Salam Alaikum, and he walks away, and he's happy, and you're happy, and he leaves you alone. Number 2, you go, it's WTF on the computer. Are you serious? Get out of here. Okay? He says, no. He says, if you want to live, he says, you've got to pay us the extortion tax. In Arabic, it's called jizya. I'm going to come by every Friday, and I'm going to pick an envelope up from you, because if you don't pay me, then there's no point in your living. You're of no use to Islam. And then you say, and what is door number 3? Well, door number 3 is, if you don't like door number 1 or door number 2, then we got to kill you because you're absolutely of no value to us. Now, if you're a Hindu, you don't get door number 2 because you're not people of the book. You don't have a scripture. So you got to go right past go. You don't collect the $200 and you get whacked because as a Hindu, you're a subhuman. Okay? Now, the whole concept behind this, allowing Jews and Christians to have an option, is because Islam tries to convince us that Allah is only a continuation. It's the same God of Judaism and Christianity, and it is the third entity and a continuation of the Abrahamic faith, which is a bunch of crap. Amen. Okay? It's not, and I've got handouts here that will prove it. I have the main 10 questions that if you ever get into a conversation with a Muslim, just ask them these questions. And the correct answers and all the references are right there. And these are the 10 main lies. So what is the basic Islamic belief? This is great. This is great. This is so childish, it's hard for us to grasp this. The Quran is the Word of God because it says it is. So you go to the very opening chapter of the Quran and it says, this is the Word of Allah. Since the Quran says it's the Word of God, whatever it says must be true. What? This is a kid's argument. This is called a circular argument. So the problem here is, and when you look at the handout, the very first question, if you ever confront a Muslim, is, do you believe that every word in the Quran literally has come from God? Now, they got to say yes. Now you know what you're dealing with. Now you know what you're dealing with. You're not going to change this guy's heart or mind because he believes that. If he believes that, then he's got a religious obligation to tax you or kill you. Done. Where's the negotiation? I always love it when you get these schmucks back here in Washington going, no, we're going to negotiate with them. Okay, Obama, we're going to negotiate with Iran. What are you going to negotiate? Don't kill me today, wait till Tuesday? There is no negotiation. It's all crap. Get over it. It's our Judeo-Christian ethic that is suicidal and is killing us. We are so damn tolerant that we have allowed this to happen. We have trusted the people in our government, and they have screwed us. Islam sees the world as an open-ended conflict, right out of the Quran. The land of peace, Dar al-Islam, and the land of war, Dar al-Harb. It absolutely denies the probability or possibility of any peaceful coexistence with devout Muslims. Can't do it. Can't do it because their ideology prevents it. The prime directive is to spread Islam by any means whatsoever. There is a religious doctrine in Islam that is defined in the Quran that allows Muslims to lie to non-Muslims in order to advance Islam. Now what's really neat is there's three ways that a Muslim can legally lie. Okay? The first is if he gets captured in war and he can renounce Islam to save his life, which is what the guys at Gitmo, you got a bunch of these clowns down there at Gitmo who do that, and they go, oh, well, okay, he's renounced it, we'd really like to believe it, he's lying through his teeth, but we really want to believe it. We really want to believe it, okay? Because we really want to show the world how tolerant we are. A bunch of schmucks. So what do? We let them go. There's a 70% recidivism rate of everybody that has been released from Gitmo going back to killing us. 70%. Remember that. And they're engaging in this doctrine called taqiyya in Arabic. It is religious lying and deception to advance the cause of Islam. So number 2, okay? Number 2 lie. Excuse me. Anything that advances the cause of Islam. Okay, number 1, save your life if you get captured. Number 2, anything that advances the cause of Islam, you can lie about. Imam Rauf, Ground Zero Mosque. Oh no, we will have everybody come in here. That's nonsense. The Quran says that if you are a non-Muslim, you cannot set foot in a mosque. But you don't know that. But you know it now. The third one is pretty cool, actually, and I gotta warn all the guys in here, don't try this at home, because it's not going to work. Okay, the third one is found in book 66, or chapter 66 of the Quran. What happened was, Muhammad had 19 wives. He could have been a fan. Anyway, Muhammad had 19 wives. Okay, the Quran says that you can't really cheat on any of them. You got to take them in chronological order and spend the night with each one of these guys. These ladies. Okay, his favorite wife was Aisha. Aisha was the daughter of one of his main people, Abu Bakr, who became the caliph after Muhammad died in 632. Okay, so he marries Aisha when she was 6. Nice guy, he waited till she was 9. Okay, so Muhammad was in 27 battles personally while he was alive. In the 22nd battle, they are battling Christian Copts, the Coptic Christians, and in the battle, this one husband gets killed, this Coptic Christian, and his wife Mary the Copt, is brought to Muhammad by some of his soldiers because they thought she was pretty hot. So they bring her to Muhammad. Muhammad agreed, and Muhammad decided to make her his slave wife. So he takes her back to Medina. He gets her own tent, and she's in her own tent, and he sneaks in one night. It's kind of like a Rudolph Valentino thing. Into her tent he crept. In the meantime, Aisha had a bunch of servants, of course, because she was the number 1 wife. So one of the servants sees Muhammad creeping, and this is all in book 66, creeping into the tent, Mary's tent. She goes back to Aisha. She said, "Hey, I think Mo's cheating on you. I saw him creeping into Mary's tent." Following morning, Muhammad comes back to Aisha, and Aisha goes, "Hey," okay, guys, don't try this at home. Only for professionals on a closed course. He comes in, Aisha says, "Hey, you were seen last night going into Mary's tent. Last night was my night, big guy." Muhammad stands there and he goes, "I know there's a reason that that's happened. Because Allah knows everything, okay? Everything is predestined. So let me go up into the hills. I'm going to go into the cave. Don't know what he was smoking in the cave, but he wants to get a revelation to get himself out of trouble with Aisha, right? So he's up in the cave. He's up there. He comes back the following day and he goes, I had a revelation from Allah. Allah gave it through the angel Gabriel, who dictated the Quran over 22 years to Muhammad up in the cave. And he said, he says, here's the revelation. As I'm standing here, go read book 66 for yourself, because it's all in there. It's about 10 little paragraphs. He says, Allah said that it's okay to lie to your wife if it'll keep peace in the home. Again, guys, don't try this. Okay? Doesn't work. Okay. So what is the doctrine of jihad? We hear about jihad. Jihad means holy war. That's what it means. Periodically, I used to have Muslims who argued with me, well, you're talking about the lesser jihad and I want to talk about the greater jihad. Really? What is the difference between the greater jihad in the Quran and the lesser jihad? Well, the greater Quran is, the greater jihad rather, is a Muslim struggle for his soul. And what is the lesser jihad? Oh, well, that's holy war. I said, isn't it interesting that in the sayings of Muhammad, which is by Bukhari, a gentleman named Bukhari, which is on my website, you can read it for yourself, there is in volume 4, book 52, the book of jihad, holy war. So I would sit and I would ask the Muslims, can you explain to me where I can find in the sayings of Muhammad in the Hadith the book of the greater jihad? Well, it's not in there. Thank you. Have a nice day. Okay? Again, taqiyya. It's absolute taqiyya. It's lies and deceptions. So, violence mandated by Allah with the objective of converting, killing, or subjugating and taxing the infidel, that's us. And it continues to define Islam all the way up to today. It hasn't changed in 1,400 years. The only reason we don't have suicide bombers in America yet is because we invited them in. They don't have to shoot anybody. They don't have to cut anybody's head off in the United States of America because you got guys like Governor Brown that's putting them in our court system. Chris Christie, who just put a Muslim from CARE into the Superior Court system back there in New Jersey because the second biggest mosque in this country is in Passaic. Connect the dots. Can you say campaign money? So what does the Quran say? Read the book. Don't take my word for it. Just read it for yourself. Book 2, verse 191. Kill infidels wherever you find them. In a couple of translations it says kill Jews and Christians wherever you find them. How clear can you be? Book 33, verse 61. Wherever infidels are found, they shall be seized and murdered. It's great. I did a debate over at Diablo Valley College here 2 years ago. And I did this. And I passed out a bunch of handouts because in 2006, for Sean Hannity and Bill O'Reilly, I put together a Quran index of all the hatred and violence that was in the Quran. The entire Quran. Went back through it, reread all 114 books, created a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet, and created an alphabetical index. It's on my website. It's 3 pages. Go print it out. Go read it for yourself. So I passed all this stuff out. There's 3 Muslims sitting in the audience. 2 guys and a girl. And the girl looks up after looking at the handout, and she goes, well, you cherry-picked all of the violence and everything from the Quran here. Duh! I don't care about the rest of it. I only care about the fact that that's in there and whether you believe it or not. Well, gee, that's not how I was raised, but you just called yourself a Muslim. I mean, if you call yourself a Nazi, I got a pretty canned reaction. Okay? What do you want to do? Well, you want to kill me and my family. And I said, you call yourself a Muslim. This is very interesting. I said, you're going to college here in the United States of America. Do you go to parties? Yeah. Do you dance at these parties? Yeah. Do you drink alcohol at these parties? Well, every now and then I have a glass of wine. Do you smoke? Every now and then I do. Didn't ask her what she smoked. And I said, well, you know, you're a Muslim I'm not worried about. Because you're a really bad one. Well, what do you mean? I said, everything that you just mentioned is prohibited for you to do in the Quran. Every single one of those things. Well, my parents never told me that. I said, well, I would be really careful about going around telling people that you're a Muslim. Okay? You may be one of the good Germans, but, you know, you're going to get lumped into the rest of this when it all goes down. Book 5, verse 33, the punishment of those who wage war against Allah and His apostle, that's Muhammad, should be murdered or crucified, or their hands and their feet should be cut off on opposite sides. That's what it says. I didn't make this up. It's right there. Read it for yourself. Go into the Quran, get a hold of Pickthall, read that for yourself. Download the 3-page Quran index, and then open up the Quran right there on the website and look up these things. Look up what's in there in that index. It's all right there. Now, what's interesting, here's another piece of lie and deception. What Muslims do is they go, well, but if you go to book 2, verse 256, it says there's no compulsion in religion. Islam doesn't force anybody who is a non-Muslim to convert. Well, that's a bunch of crap. You got to read the 2 verses in front and then the 3 verses after book 2, verses 256. So what they do, and this is clever as hell. This is brilliant. It's hard to believe that this is 1,400 years ago and some guy in the middle of the desert without flush plumbing and whatever put this thing together. Because what they say is there is no compulsion in religion once all of the people who are hostile to conversion are killed, so that you now have free choice to convert, pay the jizya, or be killed. So, if they come to you and they say, okay, you're a non-Muslim, I'd like you to convert. You say no. You say, okay, well then will you pay the jizya extortion tax? No, I won't. Now you're hostile to Islam, and then I have the right to attack you because you're not allowing them to proselytize you. It's great. It's just another one of these circular arguments. Out in the middle of the desert, this got put together 1,400 years ago. There wasn't even soap and deodorant back then. Book 8, verse 12. I will cast terror into the hearts of those who disbelieve. Well, that's us. Therefore, strike off their heads and strike off every fingertip of them. I have no idea what the fingertip thing is. Okay, I think the mafia picked that up, to get rid of evidence, put you in acid and take off the fingerprints so you don't leave them. Just wear Yeah, you can't vote. Latex gloves. Okay? This is what it says. Book 4, verse 74. Now what's interesting is Book 4 is entitled The Women. And I was on with Brian Sussman here a couple of months ago, and he always likes to get this imam from Seattle on this show called Jeff Siddiqui. And he's talking to Siddiqui. Of course, Brian and I set this up in advance, and he got Siddiqui to admit that there's actually nothing in the Quran that's codified as to how Islam should treat women. And I'm sitting there on the phone, and I'm just waiting. He finally gets rid of Siddiqui, and he goes, Peter, okay, you're on. What do you think of what Siddiqui says? It's a bunch of crap. Book 4 is entitled The Women. And it talks about how women are supposed to be mistreated under Islam. Okay? Whoever fights in the way of Allah, we shall grant him a mighty reward. Let me tell you something. There is nothing in Islamic literature that refers to 72 virgins in paradise. It's a myth. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. And I was always involved in the burial of Osama bin Laden, because here was a guy who absolutely thought he was going to go to paradise and get 72 virgins, and he wound up with 72 sturgeons. Go figure. And there's a whole bunch of stuff involved in the killing of bin Laden, and because in my book, that wasn't bin Laden, it was a body double, because they found the guy had nephritis. He had a renal disease, renal failure. They found no dialysis equipment there or anything else, and whatever. Okay, so Book 2, verse 216. Fighting is enjoined on you if you're a Muslim. Okay, having studied this thing for 40 years, having read that book 4 or 5 times a year, okay, I do have a life, by the way. Can a Muslim be a trustworthy American? The problem is, I have 2 of them that are living down the street from me. When they originally moved in, I walked over there, knocked on the door, had a copy of the Quran in my hand, and I said, hey, I understand you guys are Muslim, yeah? You see this? Yeah. I know it by heart. I can quote page and paragraph. I said, so I'm watching you. And every time I drive by and they're outside sitting on the front lawn in lawn chairs, and the women, the old lady and the wife have the hijab on, and they're sitting there out in the front, and I just pull up slowly and they look over above the book and they go, yeah, right. Now what's interesting is one of these guys is in the business of rebuilding panel vans. And you always see panel vans that this guy buys at the auction, and I'm constantly calling the Pleasant Hill Police Department going, hey, why don't you come out here and run the VIN number on this thing? Okay, these guys, they come in there on the weekends and at night, they pull it into the garage, they pull the door down. I have pictures. So can a Muslim be a trustworthy American? Can we trust one? Okay? Think of Major Hassan at Fort Hood. Oh, no, that was only workplace violence, right? That was workplace violence. Obama won't even, as Commander-in-Chief, give the 13 people he killed, our soldiers, Purple Hearts because it was workplace violence. Okay? How many people here in the military? Veterans. I don't care. How many vets we got? Oh, good. Now I'm not the only one. Okay? Navy. 63 to 65 Vietnam, flying in the back seat of an RF-4B F-4 Phantom. Best airplane ever invented. I'm here talking about it, so obviously it's pretty good. You remember taking this military oath of service. I do solemnly swear I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Right? Go look it up. It comes here from Title V, United States Code, Section 3331. It's right there in the United States Code. And if anybody wants a copy of this presentation, email me. My card and everything is sitting up here. I'll send it to you. Major Hassan, picture from the 7-Eleven camera. The day before, he shot up Fort Hood. He was really off base. Here's this guy running around. He's got the little beanie on his head where the propeller fell off and a Galabia robe. Took off his army uniform, left the base. This is how the guy ran around all the time. Here is his business card that we paid for. Our tax money. And he still hasn't been tried. You see what this says right here under his name? SOA. Stands for Soldier of Allah. You know on a computer when you're really excited about something you type WTF? Soldier of Allah on his business card paid for by us through the United States Army. And nobody asked what it meant. Nobody asked what it meant. Soldier of Allah. Nice. The senators and representatives of the United States and the several states shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support our Constitution. That's found in Article 6 of our Constitution. It's right there, been there for 227 years. Since September 17th, 1787. Article 6, go read it. I'm not making this stuff up. Here's the Congressional Oath of Office. Sounds very familiar. I do solemnly swear I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States. Constitution. 55 old white guys, September 17th, 1787, signed that piece of paper. You know who this guy is? He's a rat. He's a traitor. He's a congressman. He was elected in 2006 in Minnesota. He is a black Muslim convert, and he took his oath of office on the Quran. We allowed him to take his oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States on a copy of the Quran. There's old Bright Eyes over here. Okay? There's a close-up. That's a 2-volume leather-bound set of the Quran that was published in London in 1764. You're going to like this. It was published in 1764. It is the very first English translation of the Quran. It was done by a guy named George Sale, S-A-L-E. His translation is on my website. Just click on Quran. Here's Shakir, Pickthall, Yusuf Ali, and right down at the bottom is George Sale's Quran from 1734. Okay, so 30 years later, here is this Quran, 2-volume leather-bound set, published in London in 1764. Now, when Bright Eyes and Ellison were questioned about why was he allowed to take his oath of office on the Quran, they came up with this amazing story. Well, we found that Quran in Thomas Jefferson's library, and because Jefferson had it in his library, obviously he must have respected Islam. What a crock of crap. Now, I can prove that they're wrong. I can prove that they're wrong. Since 1983, I have been the resident lecturer in history at the Karplus Manuscript Library in Santa Barbara. And when I saw that picture and I heard this nonsense about Thomas Jefferson, I went, wait a minute. And I went into our archive in Santa Barbara and I found a 3-page letter signed by John Adams in October of 1785, 2 years before the Constitution, and co-signed by Thomas Jefferson, who was our ambassador to France at the time. Obama, on June 4th, in his Cairo speech, and I have the entire speech on my website. Just click on Obama and Islam on the left-hand sidebar, and you can read the whole Cairo speech. He said, quote, "Islam has always been a part of America's story." You can always tell when he's lying because his lips are moving.
Yeah, exactly.
Unbelievable. In a way, he's kind of right. He's an illiterate. He's not that brilliant. But in a way, he's kind of right, and I'm going to show you why. Here is the 3-page letter, because I dug it out in Santa Barbara. I photographed it, and here is page number 3. Okay? You can see here's London, October 1st, 1785, signed by our ambassador to the court of St. James in London, John Adams. Paris, October 11th, 1785, Thomas Jefferson. So this letter was drafted by Adams. Adams signed it. He sent it across the channel to Jefferson. Jefferson took a look at it. He goes, okay. He signed it, and then they sent it to a Navy captain. Well, we didn't have a Navy in 1785, but he was a captain in our merchant marine, basically, our commercial sailing endeavors, who had gone to North Africa, had gone to Tripoli. How many Marines we got in here? God bless you. Okay? How many Navy? Okay. So if I refer to the Marines as coming from the men's department of the Navy, you're not going to be offended. That's funny. That's self-deprecating humor. 2 weeks ago, I was dealing with the Tea Party in the North Bay, and some guy came up there, and I thought he was going to punch me out. I was in the Navy. You're offending me. No, I added myself in there. It's a joke. You remember that when we were all in? Okay, big joke. But look at the Marine hymn, right? From the halls of Montezuma to the shores of Tripoli. Okay? That's where this comes from. So Captain Lamb, a guy named Harold Lamb, and I've got all the Navy archive documents on this thing and all the correspondence that went back and forth. He's over there in Tripoli, and he's trying to negotiate with the Muslim Pasha in North Africa, the Barbary pirates. Okay? There's another euphemism that's a total misnomer. They were the North African Muslims. Okay? So he's negotiating over there to try and ransom our crews and our ships out of Muslim hands. So he writes this letter to Adams and Jefferson, and he goes, I need your help. So they go, okay, we got a couple of questions. So they pose 8 questions in this letter. And when you read the letter, question number 7 talks about religion. So Jefferson wants to know about their language, their government, and then he gets to question 7, religion, which says, by what principle of their religion, meaning Islam, is it that they consider all Christian powers as their enemy until they become friends by treaties? Well, it's right in the Quran. Just read the Quran. This is exactly what Muhammad said in the Quran. Okay, when the Muslims are getting screwed, they call for a peace. We need an armistice. Okay, we want a ceasefire, and the ceasefire can't last for more than 10 years. This is all in the Quran, and that gives them an opportunity, since they're losing, to go and rearm and reorganize. So now you have Bright Eyes and Ellison saying, well, Jefferson must have respected the Quran and Islam because he had a copy in his library. Well, what Jefferson did was he sent a letter, got a copy of it, to John Adams telling John Adams, hey, I understand George Sale in 1734 did the first English translation. I'd like to know what the hell's going on with these people. Buy a copy and send it to me. That's how it wound up in Jefferson's library. So these people are sitting there, they're lying through their teeth. Then we got this guy. He was elected in 2008. Andrew Carson of Indiana. He's been on TV recently, jumping up and down. Look at the committees that he's on. He's the second Muslim Congress critter. Now we got another one, a woman in a hijab in Portland. She's running for Congress. So, can you trust one of these people in America? Can you trust an American Muslim? Religiously, no. Why? Because no other religion is accepted by Allah except Islam. So don't believe them if they tell you, no, there's no compulsion, you can do whatever you want. Read the book. Book 8, verse 39, and fight with them, that's us, until religion should be only for Allah. That's pretty clear. That's pretty clear. How about Book 3, verse 85? Whoever desires a religion other than Islam, it shall not be accepted from him. So we're being played. We're being played. Imam Rauf, no, the Ground Zero Mosque. We will welcome all faiths in there, the Jews, the Hindus. That's all taqiyya. It's lies and deceptions, religious doctrine. Socially, I won't trust one socially because his allegiance to Islam forbids him to make friends with Christians or Jews. Once again, read the book. Book 3, verse 118. Do not take for intimate friends from among others than your own people. They do not fall short of inflicting loss upon you. They love what distresses you. Vehement hatred has already appeared from out of their mouths, and what their breasts conceal is greater still. How much more clear can you be? No, I work with one of these people, and she's lovely, and her 2 kids are lovely, and her husband works hard. You know something? Poverty's got nothing to do with Islam. Ayman Zawahiri, who is now the head of Al-Qaeda, was a very prominent Egyptian ophthalmologist. These are not uneducated people. These are not people out of the desert. You have some very well-educated people who are involved in this. Now in America, you have lawyers, doctors. Domestically. No, I wouldn't trust one domestically. Why? Because he's instructed to beat his wife when she disobeys him. You think I'm kidding? Just read it. Remember, Book 4 is entitled The Women. Verse 34, men are the maintainers of women. You're just property. That's all you are. In the Quran, it says you're there and exist for one purpose, and that's sex. Done. You have no other purpose in life. Okay? Quran doesn't care whether you do the dishes, you wash the clothes, you clean the house, you raise the children. They don't care. When the old man comes home and he feels like he wants to move a little blood around, you can't say no. Because he's got the right, if you say no, to beat the crap out of you. Islamic Sharia law, a year and a half ago. Muslim woman married to a Muslim guy in New Jersey, Chris Christie, in New Jersey. Guy comes home from his business, grabs the wife, says, come with me. She says no. For whatever reason, he beat the living tar out of her. The guy goes, he gets a Muslim lawyer from the American Muslim Lawyers Guild, who then goes to the American Muslim Jurisprudence Association, who then gives a legal opinion on whether or not, religiously, he had the right to beat the hell out of his wife. They issue Fatwa 2982. Go look it up for yourself. For a wife to abandon the bed of her husband without excuse is forbidden. It is one of the major sins, and the angels curse her until the morning, as we have been informed by the Prophet Muhammad. Okay? She is considered rebellious under these circumstances. As for the issue of forcing a wife to have sex if she refuses, this would not be called rape, and there is a great sin upon the wife who refuses. So he beats the crap out of his wife. She picks up the phone. She calls 911. They come out, they arrest the husband now goes to the arraignment, he brings this fatwa in there with his Muslim lawyer, they hand it to the judge, and the judge reads this thing, New Jersey, United States of America, and he says, well, if that's part of his religion, then no crime has been committed. So he dismisses the case. Well, fortunately, in this instance, the prosecutor refiled the case as a federal rape crime, and the guy is now in prison in New Jersey for 15 years. That's what he did to the wife. In the United States of America. Now, it gets worse. Here's another one. This took place in Texas. The guy cut her ears off, poked her eyes out, cut her nose off, cut her tongue out. In the United States of America. But we don't have any honor killings or anything like that. Just ask that idiot Eric Withholder. Remember these two girls in Texas 2 years ago? Muslim father decided that they were getting a little too westernized. So he takes his 9mm, throws them in the car, drives outside of town, shoots the one in the back seat, doesn't kill her. If you ever want to stay up all night, listen to the 911 call. You can get it on the web. I'm telling you, it's better than amphetamines if you're a long-haul truck driver. She's still alive. She takes her cell phone out. She calls 911. In the middle of the call, she's screaming that her father is killing the two of them. You hear the father shoot the older one in the front seat, blows her head off, and then in mid-call turns around and hits the other one in the head in the back seat, and the phone goes dead. In the United States of America. Why are these people here? They are not of our culture. Read the book. Then you're going to love this. I have a whole presentation on Islam and women, but you don't want to do it if it's connected with a restaurant and food. The Quran requires men and women to be circumcised. And I'm not going to go into the process, but all I can tell you is that when you circumcise women, the whole reason behind it is so that you don't get anything out of sex. So you won't stray. Okay? You won't go, wow, that's not bad, and if he's like that, maybe that one over there is even better. So they circumcise women. Saudi Arabia, Northern Nigeria, the Sudan. You love that one. And they're still doing it. And they still run the slave trade in Sudan. Again, we're back into Book 4, entitled To Women, verse 11. Allah enjoins you concerning your children. The male shall have the equal of the portion of two females. So what are women worth in Islam? Half as much as a man. If you have to go testify in court for some reason, it takes two women as witnesses to equal one man. So Aisha didn't like that whole idea, so she goes to Muhammad and she says, how come it takes two women to testify in the place of one man? He says, because your brains are deficient. Don't take my word for it. Go read it for yourself. Okay? It's in the hadith. The whole situation. This question was asked. He says, your brains are deficient. Aisha then asks him, well, you know, you have described what Muslim men get in paradise after they die. What do we get? Good question. Muhammad says, well, the problem is that I've seen hell, and 80% of the people populating hell are women because they are disobedient. It's right there. Read it for yourself. What is a woman worth in Islam? Half as much as a man. If a man dies, the male should have the like of the portion of two females. I didn't make this up. Read it for yourself. Intellectually. Can I trust an American Muslim intellectually? No, because he can't accept the American Constitution because it's man-made law and it's based on biblical principles, Judeo-Christian principles, and the Quran believes the Bible to be corrupt and our Constitution to be laws of man, not Allah. So if you get into a conversation with a Muslim or an imam, he's going to tell you, if you say, well, why is there Islam? He's going to say, because the Jews and the Christians corrupted the Old and New Testaments, and God was so angry that He gave one last opportunity for man to redeem himself, and it's Islam. That's what you're going to get told. It's right here in the handout with all the references. This is also interesting. In the Quran, it specifically states Jesus is not the Son of God and was not crucified. Book 4, verse 171, Jesus, son of Mary, is only an apostle of Allah. Far be it from Allah's glory that Allah should have a son. You got some idea now where we're coming from? Read it for yourself, philosophically. No, I can't trust them because Islam and the Quran do not allow freedom of religion and expression. Democracy and Islam cannot coexist. This whole Arab Spring democracy thing is a bunch of crap. Our Jeffersonian democracy we have in America took us 800 years to get here. We started out on the plains of Runnymede in England in 1215 with the Magna Carta. It took us 800 years to have what portion of we still have. I don't need to tell you who to vote for.
Amen.
You think that these guys out there in the sand for the last 5,000 years, do you think that they're going to create a Jeffersonian democracy in 6 months? Democracy in the Middle East means equality under Islam. You know what equality under Islam means? It means everybody has nothing. That's what it is. We're all equal. Nobody's got anything. That's what it is. I always love this picture. I throw that in there. Sharia. That is Sharia law. That is sacred law that comes from the Quran and comes from the sayings of Muhammad called the Hadith. And they wind up saying, okay, well, the Quran says this, so God said that, Muhammad said this, all right, and then we're going to extrapolate this out to be this. That's the iceberg. That's what an iceberg looks like under the water. Islamic Sharia law is a geopolitical, military, financial, and judicial system that must always replace the existing political and legal system in any host country, such as America. This is going on everywhere. Anybody been up to Dearborn, Michigan recently? That's the first no-go zone in the United States. The chief of police is a Muslim. 90% of everybody that lives in Dearborn, Michigan now is Muslim. And the cops don't even go in there anymore. In Britain, there are 86 operating Sharia courts. Parliament, give me a break. Parliament has just allowed them to use Islamic criminal law in certain cases that do not involve homicide. Okay? So we're talking about theft, things like that. Defamation. So now you're going to see hands and feet being cut off in England. France has got 750 no-go zones that are in France where the French police don't even go in anymore. And we lie about this. Remember all of the riots in Paris in 2005? We saw it on television. 9,000 cars got burned. And what were we told? Okay, after that train ride, wouldn't a nice hot shower feel good? We were told that these were unassimilated youths. No, what they were? They were Muslim adolescents from North Africa. They're the ones that burned the cars. How many people here remember a situation called the Armenian Genocide? The Armenian Genocide killed 15 million Armenian Christians between 1896 and 1915. You know who killed them? The Turks. The Ottoman Turks. The Muslims from Turkey exterminated 15 million Christian Armenians between 1896 and 1915, and what do we call it in the history books? The Armenian Genocide. We don't want to call it the Muslim jihad against the Armenians because we'll offend somebody. It's time to start offending people that want to kill us. Sharia law is unconstitutional. It doesn't protect free speech. There's no free speech under Sharia law. I was going to do this 2 years ago in England. I had a whole week-long seminar series set up. The British police told me if I did this, I would be arrested for defamation of a religion. And I said, you people are out of your tree. Look what's going on in your own country. When Muslims attempt to suppress critics of Islam, they are abiding by Islamic Sharia law. It's that simple. So when you have CARE, who was formed in 1994, remember the 29 groups that were here in 1991, well, there was some pushback. So they had to develop and create a group called CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations, in order to protect the rights of Muslims in America. That's why you always see CARE out there in the front jumping all over everybody who speaks out. What do? I'm almost done. What do? First of all, we have what's called the Smith Act of 1940. The Smith Act is very simple. It's codified in Title 18 of the United States Code, Section 2385. This is right up on my website under Solutions. Whoever prints, publishes, edits, issues, circulates, whatever it is, whoever organizes or helps or attempts to organize any group of people advocating the overthrow of the United States government are guilty under federal law of a Class 1 felony. Now, if we had a legitimate Department of Justice, okay, all you got to do is go into any mosque that's reading the Quran on a Friday evening, and the Quran is prima facie evidence. We have any attorneys here? Good. Okay. That's all you got to do. Take a copy of the Quran. Go and look, hey, here's what the Quran says. Okay, they want to get rid of America. They want to dominate everybody. Prima facie evidence. Okay, let's see. Also it talked about... Oh, no, wait a minute. That's this. The RICO statutes. You familiar with the RICO statutes? Okay? Racketeering, influence, corrupt organization. That's what we use to go after the mafia and La Cosa Nostra. Okay? Any act of bribery, counterfeiting, theft, fraud, obstruction of justice, slavery, racketeering. How about all the Muslims in the 7-Elevens that are smuggling cigarettes between the states, making money that they then launder and send over to Hamas and Al-Qaeda? Money laundering, murder for hire. Remember Ahmed, who's going to turn up at your place of business on Friday afternoon, pick up that envelope? Drug trafficking. They're big time into drug trafficking. All of the opium comes out of Afghanistan. But then there's bringing in, aiding or assisting aliens in entering the country and terrorism. Why aren't we prosecuting Muslims in America who are engaged in this under the RICO statutes? Oh, I know, I'm sorry, we don't want to offend anybody. We don't want to offend anybody. All cultures are equal. Then we go to the Iraqi Constitution. I have all of the new constitutions up on my website under Documents on the left-hand sidebar. So I have the new Constitution of Iraq, Afghanistan, Tunisia, Lebanon, who are some of the other ones that Libya, all these new constitutions. Right? We're over there trying to set all these people free and let them have enough democracy to elect people on their own. And it says the Republic of Iraq, this is in the very first paragraph, is an independent sovereign state. Islam is the official religion of the state. Islam is a fundamental source of legislation. No law that contradicts the established provisions of Islam may be established. Again, WTF. I wouldn't have sent one single American soldier over there to make Iraq free for Islam. I wouldn't have done it. And I think we ought to get the same hell out of Afghanistan because that's going that way too. And now we're creating this whole caliphate across the Middle East. We have now surrounded Israel. 67, it was only 70 million Arabs. You got 150 million of them now. There is an unholy alliance between Israel, or between liberals and Muslims. All you got to do is look at Hillary Clinton and look at Huma Abedin, who sits there with her since 1996. That's a long time. That woman has got a top secret security clearance. She knows everything, and she is directly connected to the Muslim Brotherhood. Go figure. Connect the dots. Here's what's going on with these people. The left in this country is using the Muslims to do dirty work. The Muslims are using the left because they're all a bunch of useful idiots, as Lenin said. And they're letting them do it. The left really believes, the true believers believe that when they achieve this Marxist utopia, that they'll be able to control the Muslims. I just got 1,400 years of jihad. Are you kidding? It's a physical impossibility. Now, I am curious why our Homeland Security Department just purchased 450 million rounds of .40 caliber Smith & Wesson. It's only used by law enforcement in this country. It's only used by them. Do you realize that that is over twice as many rounds as we have fired in 10 years in Iraq and Afghanistan put together? So what is expected here? Okay, Border Patrol, FBI, Customs Enforcement, that's all .40 caliber stuff. Okay, military doesn't use that. They all use 9mm and .45. I know because I teach this.
Please, table 52.
Okay. Questions? And you can sit here for a minute. Get your breath.